This screencast will show you how to adjust a sketched diagram to tidy it up a little bit. So here I'm adjusting the levels on a scan of a paper sketch that I've just made. And by the way, this video is speeded up 3 times, otherwise it'd be a little bit boring. So I'm going to touch up some of the lines in the sketch, and here I'm just experimenting to get the right thickness. So I can fix up some gaps. Now this is useful in case you'd like to do a fill of selected elements. I don't end up doing that in this particular diagram, but it's always good to look for gaps and just fix them up to make sure there's no problems a bit further down the track. So I'm using a Wacom tablet for this, which is why you can see the icon in the top left hand corner of the screen telling me the pen orientation and giving a bit of feedback there. So now I'm just using the eraser, the back end of the pen, to clean up some unwanted lines and smudges on the original scan, and just working my way through the image, repairing some lines and getting it as good as I'd feel like it. Now I'm not trying to make the sketch perfect. I'm trying to keep the spontaneous nature of it and not get carried away fixing things up. Now I'm selecting the different parts of the diagram and using cut and paste to put them onto different layers. So when you paste something in Photoshop, it puts it onto a new layer. Now I'm giving myself some guidelines and using the transform tool to just line up some of those elements because they're a little bit skewed. So I'm working my way through each element and pasting it onto its own layer. It's helpful to name the layers. These names are based on the steps of the sequence I'm illustrating. So I'm starting with step 4, then step 3, and the next one, here comes step 2. And you'll find it necessary when you're doing this with a background element with the initial scan, as you firstly have to name the very first layer, and that allows you to edit it and make things transparent. I did that a little bit earlier while I was just talking about the intro. Anyway, so I'm adjusting elements, moving them around, cutting and pasting them onto different layers to make it easy for the image to be composed and adjusted. There are lots of different ways of doing this, but this is a fairly quick way without having to need to go to a page layout program or anything else, just working within Photoshop. So what I'm trying to achieve here is an overall balance to the composition and a greater clarity. When I sketched this on paper, I thought they ended up being a little bit congested, the different sections a bit too crowded together. By moving them apart, I'm trying to make them a little bit clearer. Now here I've made a background layer with a solid color fill, and that allows me to switch that layer on and off and judge whether I've missed anything as I'm working through the different elements. So that layer, the red there, is now visible and now invisible. And one step I just skipped through there was I made each layer set to darken. So each of the diagram layers is set to darken the one below. And this effectively makes the white pixels transparent. So I can move the elements in relation to each other, and I don't have to worry about a little bit of the white of one layer overlapping another layer because it's set to darken. Now I've made a new layer and I'm going to selectively add some color to different parts of the element. Now working on a separate layer means that if I make a mistake, I can undo it very easily, and because those black lines are transparent, the white's transparent, the black's going over it, I can work on a bottom layer adding color wherever I feel like without fear of accidentally erasing any of the black lines. So it's very quick and convenient. So here I'm using color to try and add a little bit of useful information to the diagram to make it a little bit easier to read, and so using colors to code information, working my way through the diagram, moving it around. And you can see I'm making quite extensive use of the layers. Each part of the diagram is on its own layer. Now I've selected white as the paint, and I'm using a paintbrush and then the airbrush to add some additional detail to some of the diagrams. In this case, the diagram is about a Canson renderings, and I'm trying to make it really clear that these blue pages are a different type of medium from the white pages by adding a little bit of detail, which should make the diagram just a little bit more, a little bit easier to understand without getting carried away with too much detail. And it's also kind of fun and very quick. You'll also see my keyboard commands, the keys that I'm pressing coming up on the screen. So after a while you tend to make use of the keyboard shortcuts. It makes your workflow a little bit faster, but you can always use the menus to work out what those shortcut keys are. And so if you can't quite follow it, you can always slow down the recording if you need to. I should add, this recording isn't a replacement for actually watching some proper Photoshop tutorials. It's just a quick summary, really. So here I'm cropping the image to get rid of any unnecessary white space around the elements. And the final step is to actually export it. I'm going to set it to 700 pixels wide, which is about a good width to display on a web page, and I'll be uploading this to my Blackboard site shortly. So there it is, naming the image, and thank you for watching.